All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, they say that a person will be honest with you at 3 points in their and your relationship: when they done with you, when they mad as hell, or when they drunk as hell. So I'm trying to figure out what the excuse was for Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal being so blatantly and disrespectfully honest towards each other in that conversation that they had. Both of them seem to have a lot of pent-up issues with each other, but I think that it's more having to do with the fact that they were both alphas when they played. So they view each other as threats still, and they're constantly trying to hammer out the hierarchy over who should be considered the top dog, even just on the dais. Because it's obvious that Shaquille O'Neal, like most of the players who entered the NBA in the 1990s, they grew up in the 80s admiring Charles Barkley and modeling a lot of their game after him. And when they came into the NBA in the 90s, he was still a prominent enough player that after a while he went from being an idol and a hero to a rival. So anyway, last night Shaq and Chuck got into a little back and forth over whether or not DeMar DeRozan and Dwayne Casey were going to have to work on their relationship issues, or their alleged relationship issues, if you let the media tell you. So of course they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
I know one thing about Borrego. If they asked him to go in the game last night, he would have said yes. Rodney Hood, not so much.
Well,
thoughts on the desk?
To be honest with you, I was not surprised to see this whole Rodney Hood incident. Sometimes you could look at someone's countenance and you could tell when they're a shit starter. You can tell if there's someone who's going to tap out if things are not going their way. And Rodney Hood just comes off to me as one of those type of people. Nothing against him, but that's just the energy that I get from him.
I gave him 5. Gave it to Braun 5. He didn't. Listen. We've all been married.
The bottom line of it all is that when you play with LeBron James, you have to understand that you're going to be relegated to a background dancer. You're not even going to be a background singer or a drummer or the sax guy. You're going to be a background dancer when you play with LeBron James. That's the bottom line of it. Unless you're a transcendent talent like a Dwayne Wade or a Kyrie Irving, all you're going to do is just post up in the corner and wait for that kick out for 3. And that is that. That is all you're going to do. You're not going to be a guy averaging 13 points a game and come to Cleveland, play with LeBron James and say, well, hopefully LeBron will help me boost my scoring average up to 20 points a game. That's not going to happen. Ty Lue basically had to call LeBron aside and ask him to step into his office and tell LeBron that we're going to have to design a game plan whose sole purpose is to get Kevin Love involved in the offense. Because if you don't tell LeBron that, all he's going to do is either try to get to the basket, take his little step back 3-pointers, or just drive and kick to whoever's open. He's not going to consider Kevin Love a viable plan A offensive option, because that's not how his brain works. LeBron, when he passes the ball to someone and they start going in between the legs and going one-on-one, he's looking at them, waiting for them to pass the ball back to him. That's just how his brain functions. So you have to tell LeBron that, look, this is a real teammate. This is a real NBA player. This is not just some satellite in orbit around planet LeBron. You have to get Kevin Love involved. You have to express that to LeBron very directly, or he will not get it.
Married as players. He shouldn't have refused to go in the game, but I'm going to kill the kid. They didn't play him at all. They wanted to go in the game when they got a 25-point lead. We've all had emotional outbursts.
Yeah, well, you know what, Charles Barkley? When you have those type of outbursts in games like that, where you're about to head to the Eastern Conference Finals and you've never done shit in the playoffs in your life, at least not as an alpha, of course people are going to look at you differently. And you're in a contract year, so that's telling prospective signers or buyers or purchasers that you're not really going to be worth the amount of money that they were considering paying you, because you're not going to come onto any team and be an alpha. I've watched Rodney Hood play. Whatever LeBron's taking, Rodney Hood needs to take, because his body does not look strong enough to carry the load of an NBA team if that's what he aspires to be. And clearly that must be what he aspires to be for him to be throwing fits like that. I mean, dude, you're really on a good NBA team. You're really the 6th or 7th man coming off the bench.
I think the kid can play. Yeah, I think that you have to give him a pass.
And it wouldn't shock me if Rodney Hood has a little bit of antipathy towards LeBron. Because if you have any type of true self-belief in yourself, you're not really going to want to play with LeBron long term. Dwayne Wade is one of his best friends in life, and Dwayne Wade basically drove him out of Miami in the 4th season that LeBron was there. It was very obvious that Dwayne Wade was not as concerned about playing as he was the previous 3 years. And could it be because he wanted LeBron out? He was trying to drive him out? Who the hell knows? But Dwayne Wade clearly made a much more concerted effort to get in tip-top shape after LeBron left than he was in LeBron's last year there.
That's on one. Obviously, shouldn't have done it. Let's start there. Shouldn't have done it. And I'm sure Tyronn Lue is known as a player's coach, meaning he doesn't take, he says his mind basically, and he says what's on his mind. So I'm sure, because I think the first thing that I would expect a coach to do, or coach should do, is say, hey, tonight you're not going to play. Just letting you know right now, but be ready. That's just Steve Kerr just did it. He says, I'm not sure if these guys are going to play, but Quinn and these guys have to be ready. But it's a good chance you won't play. So you're the expectation.
Right, but you also have to understand that in order for you to get players who are receptive to that type of coaching, you have to establish that through your culture. And when you have lead players like a Steph Curry, like a Kevin Durant, who it's very easy for them to defer, particularly Steph Curry, because the Golden State Warriors are still his team. He has divested control of the Warriors predominantly over to Kevin Durant and Draymond Green, but everybody knows that it's Steph's team. If Steph were to put his foot down hard body, they would all relent. That's how you know it's Steph's team. Even Draymond with his big mouth, he would relent to Steph. So a lot of the culture in the locker room starts from the best player, because the best player has to be working alongside the coach. When the players on the team see that the best player is as concerned about glory and stats as LeBron James clearly is, that's going to trickle down to them. It's going to lead to problems. Once again, that is why players cannot play with LeBron for more than 4 years at the most. They have to leave him because that environment just becomes too toxic. I mean, you played your whole life, elementary school, junior high school, college, top prospect, all the way around, high-level draft pick, lottery pick in the draft, in the NBA draft, to come to the NBA and basically be a background dancer for LeBron James.
Expectation of what you're going to do going in the game.
And then on top of that, you're not even going to win a chip. You're going to get to the championship round and get smoked.
And he might have had that conversation with Rodney, but Rodney should have gone in the game.
So what was his reason for not going in?
Well, he's upset, man. He's like, yo, I'm not playing. But he's upset.
That's more understandable if this is game 47 of the regular season. Dude, we're heading into the Eastern Conference Finals. And you've never done shit in the NBA. You've never made an all-star team. Get it together.
Not playing.
At the situation, but you're up 3-0.
He didn't play at all. They want to put him in a blowout.
Yeah.
But has he earned the street cred to even make that decision?
I don't think anyone earned that.
Anyone? No, he should have won in the game. We all know. But like I say, I'm going to give him a pass because he was just mad because the kid hadn't played at home. He was mad because he hadn't played. He wanted to put him in a 30-point game.
Reason why he ain't played.
No, we understand that.
Ain't like he been averaging 20, 25.
Now, you could tell that Shaq was raised by an army man because Shaq is very matter of fact. The reason why you ain't played because you wasn't playing well. That's basically how it goes. Now, you could look at Charles and you could tell that, as we all know, there was no strong male figure really in Charles' life because he's trying to justify this dude getting all caught up in his emotions. I'm sorry, but right now the stakes are way too damn high. We can't be worried about Rodney Hood's feelings right now, and I get it. Playing with LeBron James can become claustrophobic, especially if you have high aspirations for yourself. But the best thing that you can do is showcase your skills and what you know is going to be a relatively long playoff run. Be ready, play hard, play defense. That will get you playing time. It's not just bad offense that will get you taken off the floor. It's also bad defense. The only one on the team who's not allowed to play defense or does not have to play defense is LeBron James. Everybody else has to be playing something near top-level defense other than LeBron and probably Kevin Love.
Listen, let me tell you something.
If you don't perform, you don't play.
They're going to need Rodney Hood.
Okay, well, he got to step up and be ready.
But
it's playoffs, man. This ain't regular season.
But you know,
Agreed.
But you know what? You just can't throw. Listen, the kid was wrong.
He was wrong.
But you know,
you could give. If put it like this, if he was happy going to the game, I'd probably be upset with him too.
Right.
So he's on the other extreme. He's on the other extreme, but he should have gone in the game. I'm glad that Tyronn Lue
because he's not doing what he's supposed to.
No, but I'm glad they didn't fire them and make a bigger deal out of it.
No, and he apologized.
Yeah, and he apologized. Yo, you got to get up. You're going to have to get up in front of my team and apologize.
He apologized.
Kenny Smith is still trying to talk as if he's a real NBA coach. Kenny Smith is the only guy who goes to all these head coaching interviews never gets the job. Everybody knows Kenny Smith is not going to get the job, but he's scared to leave his job at TNT and actually put in the work, starting out as an assistant coach and trying to build his name up as someone who could actually coach, as opposed to just being the smartest of three idiots on that panel on TNT. Sitting in between Shaq and Ernie and Charles Barkley has given Kenny Smith a very inflated self-image of himself in regards to his basketball acumen. He thinks that running up to the board and showing what teams are doing out on the floor is basically enough proof or enough of a resume to prospective teams that he knows basketball. That's not going to get you hired as a head coach, Kenny Smith. So, no, stop putting yourself out there as someone who's going to be able to dictate to players that they're going to have to apologize to the whole team. No one is going to put you as the head of a real basketball team in the NBA until you show that you can actually relate to real players and not a television screen.
Yep, he
Before you go
apologized.
get the
He
game,
did.
put out question.
Yep. Here's one that you just never thought would happen if you're looking at the entire season. Watch this from Steve Simmons. Genuine believer on the NBA, Dwayne Casey. And there were a lot on Twitter from all sorts of different sources about the Raptors heavily leaning, etc.
Steve, I'm sorry.
Casey's going to win Coach of the Year most likely. He's most likely Shaq going to win Coach of the Year. How is it Dwayne Casey's fault that the two best players on the team didn't show up? I mean,
Well, let me say this. Something has got to give. They either have to get rid of Dwayne Casey or they have to trade DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry. One of the two has to go. I mean, and I don't see how there can be any type of a conundrum over that. George Karl got fired, I believe, in the year that he won Coach of the Year because I think that the top brass at the Denver Nuggets front office realized that, look, we can either be good or we can be bad, go on a lottery, and potentially be great. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're not near winning a championship, then where are you? Now, you could say maybe we can hold pat or stand pat for another season. LeBron may go to the Western Conference. We could try to make one last run. But as I stated coming into these playoffs, I don't take the Toronto Raptors seriously. I just don't. When your leadership are two players that both have acknowledged that they have psychological weaknesses. Once again, Kyle Lowry is a guy who had to leave in the middle of an Eastern Conference Finals game because he claimed that he had to decompress. And DeMar DeRozan has come out and admitted that he suffers from depression. Neither one of those players are going to lead you to a title. They're just not. Unless they really are able to receive a lot of the assistance psychologically that they need. And I'm not going to say that they can't do that, but as of right now, no. Dwayne Casey is unproven. Is he a championship level coach, or is he just a coach that can get you good? There are coaches that just get you good. Rick Adelman, George Karl, Doug Collins, Jerry Sloan. We know all throughout the history of the NBA there have been coaches that can get you good, but they can't get you to that top level. Maybe Dwayne Casey is that guy. There's only two ways to find out. Either we get rid of the coach or we get rid of those two top players.
well, I mean, I don't know what other way to put it.
It's not his fault. The 1-2 punch has not stepped up. And, basically, they're going against LeBron. I know a lot of players, because of certain people, have never been able to get over that hump. But
That was his first shot at Charles. Because what was he referring to? He was referring to Charles and a lot of those other great players of the late 80s into the 90s who were unable to win a championship because of Jordan.
But it's not the coach's fault. He's always been a guy that's been well prepared. He's well liked. He's well respected. But the players are the ones that are out there on the court. Like, all the guys I played for, they just sat down and didn't scream and, they just kept it quiet because they said, you know what, we're not going to bail you out and you know what you got to do. Shaq, if you want to be a champion, when they start hacking Shaq, and I'm not bailing, I'm not taking you out and putting in Samaki Walker. Go to the
He said Samaki Walker.
Go to the line and make
Samaki Walker, I see him a lot.
I know I see that too. So, I hope they don't fire him. He's a great coach, but players have to take it upon themselves and say, you know what, this is what we got to do to get to the next level.
Yep.
And those two guys, they just couldn't get past the king this year.
This is why I'm in favor of moving those top two guys, because Dwayne Casey actually relented on his coaching style, or allegedly really at the behest of many of his assistants, but still give him credit for listening to his assistants. It's like a great king. A great king hearkens unto his advisors. Dwayne Casey listened to his assistants. They told him, Dwayne, we need to stretch the floor. Many of these top teams are able to dominate from the three-point line. We cannot win a championship just being a long 2-point jump shooting team. And Dwayne Casey hearkened. He implored DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry to improve their 3-point shooting. They tried to do that. So from there, Dwayne Casey's job is basically done. He tried to modernize his offense. It still didn't work. At the end of the day, and I've stated this before, when you go all the way back basically to 1958, 59, whenever Bill Russell came into the league, how many seasons has an NBA team won the championship without having an all-time great player or arguably the best player in the NBA? I mean, maybe that Seattle Supersonics team that won it in, I believe, in 79 or 78, one of those years. And, of course, the 2004 Pistons. Other than that, how many teams have won the NBA championship without an all-time great player on their squad? Very, very, very difficult to find any. I mean, just going through the list. In the 60s, it was all Bill Russell and Wilt. In 1970, it was Willis Reed and Clyde Frazier, and Willis Reed actually won the MVP that year. In 71, if I remember correctly, that was Kareem and Oscar Robertson. 72 was the Lakers with Jerry West and Wilt Chamberlain. Gail Goodrich. 73, once again, was the Knicks. 74 were the Celtics, who had Havlicek. 75 were the Golden State Warriors with Rick Barry. 76, once again, were the Celtics. I believe that may have been Havlicek's last year or second to last year. 77 was Portland when they beat Dr. J and the Sixers, and Portland had Bill Walton. 78, I believe, was the Bullets. 79 was the Seattle Supersonics. And 78 with the Bullets, I believe they had Elvin Hayes and Wes Unseld. So, I mean, 79 they had Dennis Johnson, but I would not consider Dennis Johnson a transcendent player. He was a great player. He was a Hall of Famer, but he wasn't transcendent. And then from then on, now you're coming into the modern era, where it's basically all Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Kareem, Dr. J, Moses Malone, Isaiah Thomas, Michael, so on and so forth. So it's very, very difficult to win a championship without transcendent players, and Toronto does not have that. It's easy to see who's going to win championships in the NBA. It's going to be Golden State. It's going to be Houston. Cleveland, if Cleveland has LeBron and those other two teams' stars go down.
Well, I want to say, first of all, I think Dwayne is a hell of a coach. He did a fantastic job and deserves Coach of the Year.
Yes.
But...
Well, no. Actually, Brad Stevens deserves Coach of the Year. I've been saying that all season. And more people are finally starting to understand what I've been saying all along, which is that he's the best coach in the NBA.
Uh-oh.
He's got to repair his relationship with DeMar DeRozan.
No, he don't.
Yes, he does.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah, you have to, because listen, if your best player, you bench your best player.
Why was he benched?
That's.
Shaq got him once Charles started stuttering like that.
That's not the point.
It is the point.
Yeah, actually, it is the point. Because if you're the best player, you're either good enough to lead your team or you're not. And if you're not, then you have to be replaced. That's how that goes, Charles Barkley. History is a chronicling of replacement. We're all replaceable once a higher grade model comes along, for whatever reason, whether it's age or skill. DeMar DeRozan is not a transcendent player. He's a nice shooting guard. I hear a lot of idiots talk about how DeMar DeRozan, if Michael Jordan was playing today, he'd be DeMar DeRozan, all that nonsense. If DeMar DeRozan was playing back in Michael Jordan's era, you know what he'd be? He'd be Ron Harper before he hurt his knee. Ron Harper was a very good athletic shooting guard. I don't even think Ron Harper ever made an all-star team. I'm not sure. He may have made one in the late 80s, maybe 89 or 90. One of you brothers can check on that. But Ron Harper was not a transcendent player. Neither is DeMar DeRozan. DeMar DeRozan was not as good as Mitch Richmond. He wasn't as good as Joe Dumars was. He's not as good as Reggie Miller was. He's not even as good as Reggie Lewis was. I mean, that's a big joke. Not even to mention Clyde Drexler. Like, give me a break.
That's the point.
You don't disrespect your best player. If you don't have a great relationship with your best player, you're never going to win.
That's not true.
He did not.
That's not true.
He did not, well, in
That's
your
not
opinion,
true.
No, actually, Charles Barkley, that's not his opinion because he actually won. So he actually has the right to say that's not true, especially since he won 4, and as he's going to state, he did not get along with all of his coaches. As a matter of fact, in sports history, many championship teams are rife with fractured relationships. And oftentimes Charles thinks that he can speak about things that he knows nothing about and speak about them with authority. At the end of the day, bro, you didn't win. And you can claim it's because of Michael Jordan all you want. Michael Jordan gave you 2 years to win after he left. 94, you lost to the Rockets. 95, you lost again. And in one of those series, you had a 3-1 lead and lost to the Rockets.
No, just because you say something, it's just...
That's not true.
It's not true.
Me and Pat Riley never saw eye to eye, and what happened to my man win. So it's not true what you're saying.
Well,
it's not true what you're saying.
It's not true.
I'm just letting you know
was the man on that team.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Well, look, when Shaq first came to the Miami Heat in 04, he was the man on that team. Now, Dwayne Wade, because he was rising in ability, eventually took over and commandeered that team. But Shaq started out as the main guy. And the fact of the matter is that after Shaq left the Heat, they were never the same until LeBron got there. They were barely 500. At best, they were a 500 team after Shaq left. They had 1 year where they were horrific. Now, I know that Dwayne was hurt, but he had a comeback year in the 08-09 season when he averaged about 30 a game, and they still were barely above 500. So, yes, Dwayne Wade was the lead guy in their championship contending seasons, but Shaq was probably still the best player on the team, certainly the most dominant, and he was the one who attracted the most attention defensively.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I was a role player, you're right, but you know what?
I've said this already about Shaquille O'Neal. As great as he was, scoring something like 29,000 points, winning 4 championships, he left a lot on the table. Shaq should have had 40,000 points. He should have had 6-7 championships.
But you know what?
That's my point. That's my point. But I'm saying, with your best player...
You don't know what you're talking about when it comes to championship.
I agree with you, Shaq.
I'm just telling you something. Dwayne Wade carried you to that championship. No matter how much you scream, you loud, that does not make you right. You're wrong in this.
And that's why you ain't win, because you was a baby. Stop babying these players.
Stop babying no players.
He don't play. He don't play. You got to sit his ass down.
I agree with you, Shaq. If you're not producing, you got to sit down. We're down 0-3 in the playoffs. This is not game 56 of the regular season where you're 5 for 19 and we're just going to let you ride because we don't want to hurt your confidence. Dude, we're down 0-3 in the playoffs. We need to get a win. We're desperate. We're fighting for our lives. If you're not playing well, you got to come off the floor. Bottom line.
No, period.
He got to repair.
He ain't got to repair nothing. You got to stop babying the players. You got baby, that's why you ain't win.
I agree with you, Shaq. And what he's saying right now towards Chuck is probably hurtful to Chuck because no matter how Charles Barkley tries to deny it, it hurts him that he never won a championship. And Shaq comes at Charles really hard because, as I've stated, they're both fighting for supremacy on the panel because they're both alphas. They come from an era where it was kill or be killed back in the NBA in the early 90s. But he's correct. Charles Barkley was babied. He was babied by Jim Lynam in Philadelphia. He didn't get his way, so he forced a trade to Phoenix. And then Paul Westphal babied him. And then eventually Charles fell out with the Phoenix front office. And then he went to the Rockets. And he got babied over there. And finally they got tired of him because he was old. Charles is the reason why they lost Game 6 of the Western Conference Finals in 1997. He was the one who missed his defensive assignment that allowed John Stockton to get open and hit that game-winning 3. So it was on him. And let me also say this. He also missed his defensive assignment in 93 when John Paxson hit the game-winning 3. So Charles has only himself to blame for a lot of his misfortune in his career. And as I already stated, in one of those Rockets series, they allowed the Rockets to come back from down 3-1.
He got the. I didn't have Dwayne Wade and Kobe Bryant carry me up and down the court.
Yeah, but you had Kevin Johnson, you had Dan Marley, and you had them in an era where they were not super teams. You had good players around you in an era where the average championship team may have had one other all-star, if that. Hakeem did not have any other all-stars on that team when they beat you, Charles Barkley. That's a fact.
So why you not on the fan? Because I got 3 finals MVP, Chuck.
Because you
Google me, Chuck.
Everybody knows you were a great player. Everybody knows you were a great player.
You don't know what you're talking about.
Tell him, Shaq. They try to claim that Shaq won his titles because of Kobe. Kobe was a great help, but at the end of the day, we all know who the better player was. We know who the more dominant player was on those first 3-peat Laker championship teams. The bottom line, people can get mad about it. They can claim, well, Kobe did this and he did that, and he won the game in Game 4 against the Pacers. Shaq, look at Shaq's numbers in those playoffs in 2000, 2001, and 2002 in a much more physical era. Pure dominance, averaging 31 and 15. I mean, just crazy.
He got to step up and play.
We all didn't have other players carrying us up and down the court. You can yell as much as you want.
I got 3 finals MVP.
You were a great player, but you wouldn't have got if you didn't have Kobe in the wing. I will say,
now here come Kenny. Kenny gonna cut it off Like mama breaking in on her son's fighting. Boys. And hey, Kenny Smith was on a team that beat both Chuck and Shaq in the playoffs in '95.
I will say.
You gotta stop that.
I will say that
I agree. You'll find that most of the great players in NBA history, they were able to attain a higher level when they were coached by coaches that were not scared of them and did not baby them. That's the problem with Westbrook right now. Every coach is scared of his ass.
There is a stand that you...
The season that Allen Iverson got to the finals, it was because Larry Brown put him in his damn place.
Stand that you take. For your, like, the guy's not playing well, your bench, he did have confidence in his bench. But what I think what Charles is saying, and what I would believe as well, is when you don't play your best player in those key moments, you also take away his responsibility as the leader of the team. And so then he becomes, well, you're not the leader in the locker room, you're not the leader on the court. And so you can take that away from him, which he is your best player, and for 82 games in the regular season, he's going to be it. So when you take it away from him, that is a difficult situation that at some point you have to address. I don't know about if it means of repairing it, but you definitely have to address it.
You are the best player. You are expected to, and you have to step up. If not, consequence.
Once again, when you hear Shaq speak, you could tell that he was raised in a military household. Either you do things or you don't. Either you can do it or you can't. And if you can't do it, stand down. That was the methodology of how he was raised. And as I've stated, I believe that Shaq's dad was an MK handler and was involved in a lot of the programming involving Shaq. I stated that in another video. But either way, I agree for the most part with Shaquille O'Neal. I understand where Kenny Smith is coming from, but Kenny also has to grasp we all make exceptions for exceptional people. When you're exceptionally intelligent or exceptionally good looking, exceptions are made for you. And maybe DeMar DeRozan is not exceptional enough as an NBA superstar or star for Dwayne Casey to make an exception for him. And I know that that's a hard lesson for him to learn, but it is what it is.
Consequences.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
If Pop is coaching the Raptors, the way that Lowry and DeRozan played, could they have beat LeBron?
Hold on. Ashley, thank you for answering my question. What did Popovich do this year with LaMarcus Aldridge? He went and apologized. That had to be done. And LaMarcus played.
Chuck, they hadn't played well in the first 3 games.
But you're not paying attention to me.
Because
I'm telling you, Greg Popovich is the best coach we got in the NBA today.
Yes.
He was man enough to say, hey, you know what, LaMarcus? I shouldn't have did it like that. That's why he's Popovich. And Dwayne Casey, if he's ever going to get that team back, he don't have to do it publicly or something. He's going to have to sit DeMar down and handle that situation. It's the exact same situation. Pop was man enough to come out and say, hey, you know what, maybe I should try to do this differently.
That's a different...
I agree with Shaq. That's a different situation. There's a big difference between having to sit your star for a game as opposed to playing him out of position or playing him in the wrong role. That's a coaching issue. When a player gets sat in an extremely adverse situation when you need a hot hand, that's oftentimes a player issue. If you're out there shooting 3 for 18 and we're down 0-3, we need to win the game to keep our season alive, and you get sat, that's entirely different from your best position being the small forward and you're getting played at power forward and center, and it's costing you in regards to how you're viewed around the league. You're not putting up as good of numbers and you're not helping your team. That's a coaching decision. That's a coaching issue. Popovich should have apologized for that, as he did. It's 2 different scenarios.
It's a different situation.
It's not. What's different?
Situation.
What's a different situation?
Pop said he apologized for using him wrong. When you're a superstar, you're expected to step up and play at a certain level.
Well, that's the problem. DeMar DeRozan is not a superstar. There's only 4 superstars in the NBA. I always say that. Right now, James Harden and Anthony Davis are knocking on the door, trying to get in. As we're going to find out next week, does James Harden deserve to be considered on that top echelon?
Level. Everybody's done it. You done it. Mike done it. Kenny done it in the finals. You got to play a certain way. If you don't play a certain way, you get dealt with accordingly.
And like I say, and if Dwayne, he's got to address that DeRozan situation, plain and simple.
So we agree he should keep his job.
Of course he does.
Okay. He's a great coach. All right.
Well, that's another question. No, I don't think that, of course, he should keep his job. That's up to the Toronto brass. Sometimes you have to make very, very difficult decisions that it's hard at the moment for other people to understand. When Golden State chose to get rid of Mark Jackson, nobody understood that. When Denver chose to get rid of George Karl, very few people understood that. When Oklahoma City chose to get rid of that coach, what's his name? The one who's coaching the Washington Wizards now, Scott something. Very few people understood that. But in order for you to push to that next level, you have to make hard decisions. But anyway, very good conversation. I mostly agree with Shaq. Peace.